I want to tell you about how the doctors told me and my wife that they believe my 5-year-old son had a very rare bone cancer. So that's his spine, rib cage, and that was protruding off of his back. It's very hard to look at, to be quite honest. So last fall, me and my wife found a lump on my son's back, and I asked him what it was, and he told me he fell off the playground. Um, was not discolored in any kind of way, didn't appear to have any bruising, but he told me he was on top of the playground, not like at the top level, but actually on top, and fell off. And it hurt, but it doesn't really hurt anymore. So like, okay, it wasn't that big, but still noticeable. So we thought it would go away. We reached out to my father-in-law, who's also a doctor. We got on the phone with him. He lives far away. And he said it's probably just a hematoma. But to watch it, if it starts getting bigger, you need to go to the doctor as fast as you can. So that's exactly what we did. We watched it for a little while. We noticed and felt like it was getting a bit bigger. So we took him to the doctor. The doctor looked at it and immediately kind of thought, that's not good looking. They didn't flat out say they think it might be cancer just yet, but they told my wife that it was a strong possibility that that could be a tumor. And the next step would be to go get testing. So they sent us to go to get an x-ray. The x-ray came back as nothing, and well, not nothing, they just didn't know what it was. Then the next step was to go get a CT, and they looked pretty blown away by it, didn't know what it was. They don't know. Then we got a CAT scan. They didn't know what that was either. We got another image that I can't remember what it was. They seemed baffled. They didn't know what it was. Then we got an ultrasound, and I was there this time. My wife was with my son the other times, but this time I was there getting the ultrasound, and it was a ultrasound tech that I was familiar with because I have actually been scanned by her in the past, and we were talking, and as when she saw the mass on my son's back, you can see the change in her face. She did it. I asked her, was there anything she can tell me? She was like, no, there's nothing I can tell you. I just take the images. But she went from being kind of happy and joking and talking to very serious at that point. Then the doctors got all of that information back to the main doctor's office, and they told us that they believe it's a tumor and cancer. And they sent us up to CHOA, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Now, this is not diagnosed yet, but that's what they're believing. And they were saying that there's not a guarantee, but this is the precautions we need to take. So my wife went up with my son there, and began to tell her that they believe very strongly that it's cancer. This particular doctor, I won't say her name, who is probably one of the most decorated doctors in Atlanta, well, as far as children having cancer, she's world renowned. They fly people in from all over the world, for children at least, and she seems to specialize in what she believes this type of cancer is, growing off of his back shoulder blade. And she felt very confident that it was cancer. And they told us that they wanted to get us in to do another, I believe a CT. I'm sorry, there's a lot of different tests we did, and they all are kind of jumbled. And this was just after the Thanksgiving holiday break. And they wanted us to go get that. So they told us that. Our hearts are heavy, scared, and didn't quite know what to do. And it was particularly hard for my wife because she had lost her mother to cancer and her first husband to cancer. So she knows the devastation of cancer more than most. So I then took him to the next appointment, and he went under. They put him under to take this scan, took the scan. And then we got the results back from that. And that radiologist, along with this doctor, both feel very strong that it's cancer, that the tumor on his back is cancerous. So, this is not a diagnosis just yet. We're in the process of it. And you might be thinking that's a little bit careless to be throwing that around. But these are not stupid doctors, and these are not stupid people. These are some of the leading professionals in America. And they were trying to prepare us for what they believed was on the horizon. And they deal with this day in, day out. So we did that. And now they told us, we want to get your son in for a biopsy. We're going to put him down, and we're going to have the labs downstairs ready. We're going to put him under. We're going to cut into the tumor, take a couple samples out, and then immediately rush it downstairs to be tested. And then we will confirm that it is cancer at that time. And they were prepared at that point to put a tube in. And then we were going to immediately, within a week, start chemo. That was the next step. So my father-in-law was in town, and like I said, he's a radiologist, and we showed him the images, and he looked at them, and he did his best to compose himself. I was sitting here in this chair, and he was standing over there and looking at the laptop and looking at the images. And we also had other friends over that night, and everything was very lighthearted and fun and joking, and we were eating dinner, having a good time. He turned around and he says, well, I really don't know what this is. And I didn't believe him. He's a radiologist. That's what he does. He looks at images all day long, and he tells the insurance companies what he believes they are and what he believes is the next course of action. He immediately, after he stopped looking at them and told us that he doesn't know, we have to wait for the doctor, went to the bathroom. I felt like something was wrong, and I texted him that bad, and he texted back, well, I don't know what it is. I believe he was just trying to help me and my wife save face, to be quite honest, because that was his grandson, his firstborn grandson at that. And I'm sure he went to the bathroom and cried, because he was the one that lost his wife. His whole tone the rest of the weekend changed. The next day, we went to go buy a Christmas tree. And at that point, all he kept was telling me is, you need to get ready for chemo. You need to get ready for chemo. You need to get ready for chemo. And I actually just started seminary that August. So I actually stepped away from my career and went to full-time school. So there was about a 6-week period of a lapse of insurance. We were going to go on my wife's insurance, but there's 6 weeks where we're elapsed. And he was just like, you need to figure out a way to pay for chemo. Chemo's, to do all the chemo that would be necessary would probably be like around $50,000, $60,000. We would have to sell some things in order to try to make that happen, but it wouldn't be quick to be able to get that. So he's like, you just need to be ready, whatever you need to do, Obamacare, charities, whatever state-funded stuff, you need to look into whatever you have to look into to get insurance to pay for chemo. That man's a professional and knows what he's looking at. He's a radiologist, and all he could say after seeing the images of my son's back was, you need to get ready for chemo. My blood pressure's through the roof. I don't know how my wife was getting through. I don't know how I was getting through. I mean, it was clearly the grace of God, truly. But from that moment on, it was hard for me to not look at my son as dead. It was hard for me to put on a brave face every day. It was hard for me to think of what my family's going to be like. And I was trying my best to not even ask God why, because I was afraid if I even asked him that, the spiral I would go down. I tried not to feel. I tried not to think. I was just, how do I get my family through this? What's the next step? It's all I could do to not break down. So, fast forward a bit, we're there the day of the biopsy, and they kept telling us when we put the port in, when they put the port in, they knew in their mind it was cancer, and they were ready to do it. And from how fast it grew, because it grew fast, it went from just a lump to about the size of a baseball hanging off his back. They were preparing it for it to be very aggressive and far along. So me and my wife are there at Choa, downtown Atlanta. And they put him under and they take him back. They told us it would be about maybe 2 hours. So me and my wife go to get something to eat. We come back, and when we come back, the doctor comes in just baffled. And she's like, well, I've done 2 tests down in the lab, and it's showing no cancer. And I'm trying not to jump out of my seat with joy, but so afraid of what she's going to say next. And so they said they went in for 1 sample, took it downstairs, no cancer. Perplexed the doctor. They went back upstairs, took another piece out while he was still under, took it back downstairs, no cancer. So at this point, the doctors makes no sense. And all the doctors there, because there was a whole team of them, were like, this makes no sense. So they took 3 more samples, and then they scraped the bone and they sent it away. They sent it away to the University of Michigan, go Blue, to get tested. And they were going to do some stain tests, some genetic tests, and a whole bunch more tests that I don't even know the names to, that I don't remember. There's a lot of testing. And they sent it away and they told us you'll hear something in about 10 days. So the chances went from being you need to prepare for your son to have cancer and what that looks like to now they're saying maybe about 50% chance, and that they don't understand it and they don't get what's going on because it doesn't add up. So they're blown away. They're baffled. The doctor even apologized. Like she's like, I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. And we fully believe that it made sense for this to be cancer. Get sent away. The stain tests come back, and those come back very positive. Well, I'm sorry. They come back with positive news saying no cancer. The last test to wait for is the genetic test. And now we're down to maybe like a 10% chance of cancer. And I'm ecstatic at this point. And my wife's still very cautious and weary, but I'm over the moon. And then we get that final call from the doctor saying that the genetic test came back. It's absolutely no cancer. That this was just a freak mutation of cells that produced the tumor on his back, but is non-cancerous. And they're baffled. They don't understand it. In fact, they want to keep the samples to study and do more research upon it because it made no sense. Everything in their experience and their professional knowledge pointed to cancer. And I don't know how many people I hit up. Hundreds. I spammed people on my phone. I don't know how I didn't get blocked. Anyone that I knew that was a Christian, anyone that I knew, Christians I haven't talked to in years, Christians that I haven't been to church with like almost a decade ago, I'm hitting them up because I know they love Jesus and they would go on my behalf to God and pray. And we were praying nonstop. I even went on Tim Ross's The Basement and typed it in the group chat, and an overwhelming amount of people were praying because I felt like there was nothing else that could save my son but God. My father-in-law, who's a professional radiologist and has been for years, didn't tell me, but you can tell by his actions and his words that he believed it was cancer. Some of the world's leading experts at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta believed it to be cancer. These are not dumb people. These are people that know what they're talking about. And somehow the cancer it just wasn't cancer. It doesn't make sense. It's baffling. And the only thing I can attribute it to is God healed my son. God healed my son of cancer. I am so blessed and pleased and thankful that he did choose to heal my son, because there's many people that he doesn't heal to choose, like my wife's mom, or her first husband, or some of the people that I know that have lost to cancer, people that you might know that you've lost to cancer. We didn't even need to do chemo. God just miraculously healed my son. There's really no other explanation. You can't explain it with science because they're all baffled. When we called my father-in-law, you could hear him crying. It just doesn't make any sense. And he said it with joy, but he couldn't believe it. The doctors, the world leaders couldn't believe it. But Jesus touched my son. And he saved him. And I just wanted to tell you, God still heals. And he's sovereign. And God would have been good if he didn't save my son. God would have been good if I had to bury him. And I was preparing for that. But I was praying my butt off. And I had hundreds of other Christians praying their butts off. And God saves my son. God saves my son.